Good morning and welcome to the Point. This morning we continue with what will be a long series of programs dealing with the primary election. That election's not until August, but we have some 24 primary matchups. We'll try to feature as many of them on this program as we possibly can. This morning it's another race for the State House, the 59th. That is part of Cass and all of St. Joseph County. It's currently held by Republican Matt Laurie, and he is term limited. So there are 4 Republicans looking to replace him. This morning, you'll hear from them all. Running for political office is a pretty big undertaking. State House races and big primaries like the one you have can take a lot of time, a lot of effort, not to mention quite a bit of money. What made you run?
Well, the timing's pretty good because I'm retiring as an educator this June. Matt Laurie, who's the current House of Representatives, he's term limited, and he won't be running, so there's no incumbent. I was approached by several leaders in the community because of my unique background to run for the office. After sitting down and having some conversations with them, we felt that I was the best candidate, and it was a viable campaign to run. Part of the uniqueness of my background, from my understanding, I'm the only candidate that's actually been a resident and lived in both Cass and St. Joe County. The 59th district covers Cass and St. Joe County both, and I've lived in both. So during that time, I built up some relationships and have a pretty good understanding of the communities. As far as the school district, I have a really unique background. For the 13 years that I've been superintendent, I've been putting together budgets that are $24 and $25 million, which is a significant amount of money, and I've been doing that through some tough economic times. And Three Rivers is on solid ground financially. From my understanding, we have one of the highest ratings from Standard & Poor's in the state as far as school districts go. My career as an educator, I arrived at Three Rivers as an assistant principal. Then when the principal left, the Board of Education asked me to become the principal. When the superintendent left, they asked me to become the superintendent, and I certainly wasn't being promoted because I was incompetent or didn't have the ability to bring people together to make our organization strong. And it's been a really good ride. We kind of bucked the trend in Three Rivers. I have 7 board members, 375 employees, 2,700 students, their parents in a community with high expectations. But through that, I don't believe that I've had a grievance from a teacher in more than 6 years, and that speaks to the culture that we've established and how we work well with one another. Our labor contracts also buck the trend. The one that I settled for this year, we settled in 2 evenings over some pizza and pop with no attorneys present. They asked me to settle another contract before I left, and we settled an additional 2 years in 1 evening over pizza without any attorneys present. But I've also been a part of the Chamber of Commerce for 12 years. I served on their board of directors. I was their chairperson or president. So, throughout all that time, I've been connecting with the community and the business leaders, and I want to continue to be a part of the community and represent them.
What is it you want to achieve as a state representative? Because what you've done at the local community level is one thing, because I make the assumption that there are a lot of people in the community that are all pulling in generally the same direction, or at least have the same view of the community. When you go to Lansing, if you're successful in your primary and then in the general, there'll be 109 other representatives who have dissimilar views because they have their own to take care of. So what do you hope to do if you get to Lansing?
Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to represent the constituents of the 58th or for the 59th district. That includes St. Joe and Cass County. I need to represent them first. Oftentimes I think urban areas are driving the legislation and they forget about the more rural areas. And in the more rural areas we have more agriculture. But together, statewide, I think we're all concerned about economic development. If we can move economic development, and that means that equates to increased jobs, increased businesses and locating here. If that happens, then the revenues increase, and it makes it easier for the state to put together a budget. I've always believed, I have a lot of experience in putting budgets together, and I always put it together from a zero-based budget perspective, meaning that each year is different, and I put the money where our priorities are. And I think at the state level, when the revenues are down, we need to make tough decisions on what our priorities are. And when the revenues are higher, we can do some of our pet projects and do different things. But I've got a lot of thoughts about the economic development. I'm also concerned about seniors. That's a large growing population. I did not agree with the increase in the taxes on pensions. I think that's a disincentive to stay in Michigan, and I hope they don't move away. I also think we would be well served by coordinating services to seniors so they can access those easier. Put it in perspective, and I'll be politically correct, whether you're a Michigan State fan or a Michigan fan, there's about 100,000 people that will fill those stadiums. Well, if we lost 100,000 seniors that moved to other states, and if each one of them were spending $30,000 a year, 100,000 people, that equates to about $3 billion. And if you're pushing that kind of money through the economy, that's creating jobs.
This is the question that I start with everybody. Why run for this office? Why now?
Well, basically I've been in business for many, many years, and I'm pro-business. And I'm looking at what's going on in the state right now with Governor Snyder and this legislature. And as you've probably heard on national news, we are the comeback state. And I just spent 3 years working for Senator Bruce Caswell in the 16th District. I like what I see. I want to continue some of that, and I want to be a part of that. So that's basically the main drive. The second part of that is economic development. My business background says that pro-growth means better jobs, less concentration and worry about where do we get tax dollars, and that really fits into my know-how, is what I want to say.
When you look at the district that you hope to represent, what do you see as the real challenges within the district that are specific to the counties that you want to go to Lansing and represent?
In my district, which is Cass and St. Joseph counties, by covering St. Joseph County specifically for Senator Caswell, I attend a lot of meetings, specifically community mental health, economic development, Commission on Aging, Human Services, the Health Agency. Seems like one of the overriding themes, with the exception of economic development, was how many people are on assistance, on services. Approximately 25% of the counties on services. Growing up in that community from a very early age, I've seen that transition move that direction. I can remember when we were more prosperous community, downtowns were vibrant, jobs were more available. I don't see that now, and so I think that's a major issue that needs to be looked at.
What can or should, from your perspective, government, state government do to try to address those problems? Because people in your party will very often say, it is a familiar refrain that government doesn't create jobs, that businesses create jobs, but many of the Republican candidates I talk to say we need to do something about creating jobs. So apparently there is a governmental component there.
There is a role. There's a role for government, but it's one of a partner, not necessarily the driving force coming from the top. It does, as you heard the old term, needs to come from the bottom, the grassroots. I believe there needs to be a public-private investment here, a partnership, and I think that Governor Snyder's had some good ideas in terms of get some of the regulations off the back of small businesses. One example going on right now is the personal property tax that they're looking at or have already worked on to try to take that burden off of small businesses, and those are the motivating engines of our counties and our whole state. Going forth as far as other economic motivators, I'm hearing tax ideas that even like talking about touching the income tax, and I'm curious to find out what that's all about.
That's happening at the same time that you're also hearing some people suggest that revenues need to be increased to take care of infrastructure or roads needs. The governor says $1.2 billion a year, perhaps, maybe $100 a year additional on car registration, or as the House of Representatives is working on, maybe changing the way they tax gas to get partway there. Have you given any thought to where you would be on something to do with infrastructure? I think your boss has even proposed perhaps a 1 cent increase in the sales tax that would go for infrastructure.
They have. I was in Lansing a few weeks ago and listening to some of the ideas that they were throwing around. Much to my surprise, I was surprised to find out that the sales tax on gasoline does not go to roads and infrastructure. So I think that perhaps is something that needs to be addressed because the general public believes that it does. The maintenance and upkeep of roads in our country or in our state is basically affected the fact that we're a Midwest state. We have hard winters. This winter was definitely a hard exception. I think the governor and the legislature put in about $512 million in March just to get us back running again. That does not include new construction, bridges, and stuff like that.
Almost out of time in the 30 or so seconds we've got left. I like this question because I think there is a big, long path that has to be traveled before this election cycle is over. But if you are successful in August, and if you are successful in November, and if we move the calendar ahead to January of next year, you've been sworn in, what's the first thing you'd want to do when you walked in that chamber over in the House?
I think the first thing is because of my personal nature, I want to be accepted. I'm not going to go in and try to buck heads with anybody. I want to understand what is on the table at that time, where I can contribute, and gradually work my way in to being a positive force in the legislature. I do not intend on going in and being a negative person saying everything is wrong. I think we're on the right path. As long as I can do that, my whole life has been that way. People that accept me, they say, Bob, you're a good listener. You learn, you have good ideas. I'll go forward with that, and I guarantee you we'll have some positive results.
When we come back, 2 more candidates running in the 59th House District primary. And later in this program, we'll talk to you about upcoming To The Point episodes. All that's next when we return. Welcome back to The Point. The August primary is still more than 2 months away, but a lot of important races have to be decided in August before we can move on to the general election, and that's what we're focusing on now. We've been bringing you some of those primary matchups, and we continue this morning with one from the 59th House District. That is part of Cass and all of St. Joseph County, currently held by Republican Matt Laurie. He is term limited, so there are 4 other Republicans that are trying to replace him. You've heard from 2 of those candidates. Now the other 2 this morning, To The Point. This is a busy year. There are a lot of primaries with a lot of folks in them. Yours has 4 people in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
What makes you choose now to run for this race?
This is something I've always wanted to do since I was a young boy, probably around 5 years old. I've always wanted to run for public office of some sort, and I always knew that it started at the important level, at the local level. And so, although this decision probably came as a surprise right now, taking everything into consideration, this is what I feel is the best move at this time. I want to do this because I am passionate about our local government, and I want to see it done well.
When you look at the district that you hope to represent, what are the issues that drive you into this race? What are the things that you think need to be done?
One of the underlying issues that I think is extremely important to our district is we have a lot of young people leaving the district right now. Being young myself, that hits home to me because I'd like to see our young people graduate and stay home. Now, you can't go to Lansing and legislate that, but I think we need to keep on doing what Rick Snyder has done a good job of, and that's bring jobs back to Michigan, make ourselves a business-friendly state. We haven't been known as that, and I'd like to bring us back to that. And I think that means making regulations a bit friendlier to businesses and bringing them back. We need to stop the trend of people leaving and businesses leaving the state and more specifically our district. One other issue that hits home to just about everybody in the state is our roads. One thing we need to fix soon and fix for the long term is our roads. And I think that's, if you talk to citizens nowadays, that's the thing they want to see change the most because that's the most practical thing to them.
Well, over in the House of Representatives, they've come up with a plan that they say will generate maybe $500 million,
Sure.
at least for the next year, in revenues that already exist. And some of that money may be going forward. But the governor said that to fix those roads, it'd take $1.2 billion at least,
Sure.
and for at least 10 years. And in order to get there, he and others believe you're going to have another stream of revenue. Would you support more taxes to fix the roads?
I would, and I think that can come from a variety of places. Where it comes from depends on, again, your personal opinion, but I think that we need to take a look at our sales tax and come up with some sensible solutions from the sales tax to fund our roads. That way everybody's paying for it, because everybody benefits from the roads. The other thing we see in our counties, and we have a primary ballot issue for August in our county, is the county is increasing their millage by a couple of mills in August. So depending on whether or not that gets approved, that will show whether or not citizens approve of doing it at the county level as well.
Talk to me about education. That's where your background
Sure.
is. And in the state, there is always an argument about not just how much we spend, but where we spend money on education. Give me your take
Absolutely.
on that.
I think that education is not an issue where you just throw money at it. I want to play the middle ground here a little bit. We can't throw money at education blindly, but I would like to be smart about where we put our money. Right now, our small schools in our county are being hit hard by per pupil funding, and it's hurting kids, and that needs to stop. We need to look at situations and where we're hurting kids here because we don't have enough funding. We need to give our schools more funding and help out our kids. That's what it comes down to. And so, no, we don't need to blindly throw money at our schools, but yes, we do need adequate funding for education. That's for public education to work. That's what you need.
We've got 45 seconds or so
Sure.
left, so I want to give you this hypothetical. If you make it through the August primary, if you make it through the November general, and you walk in, you get sworn in, you walk into that chamber for the first time sometime next January, what's the first thing that you want to do to represent the people here in the district that you hope to represent?
Well, I want to do what I've been doing. I want it to simply show my face and take a look at all the township meetings and go out and say hi. And I think that personable communication is the form that works best. Going out and shaking hands and saying hi, how can I help you? If public servants act more like public servants and really serve our people the way they're supposed to, I think that people can be better represented. Hi, how are you? What can I do for you?
Running for state representatives, quite an undertaking. Why did you decide to do it, and why did you decide to do it now?
Thank you. That's a good question. I decided to run for state representative 40 years ago when I attended Boys State at Michigan State University. It was put on by the American Legion, and they inspired me to eventually seek this office. I knew that I was going to decide at that time actually, that I would do it later in life. I spent the last 3 decades in local government offices multiple times. I've been elected 11 times and appointed to several other different offices.
So running for office is not anything new, but running for an office that would take you to Lansing would be something new, and the parameters surrounding that are a little different because you become one of 110. What are some of the issues you would like to go and share if you're successful in August and again in November that you would like to share with the other members in the State House?
One of the initiatives I'd like to see us work towards is expanding the career and technical education availability to train Michigan workers for people who choose paths where they want to learn how to do things, and utilize the community college system. There's 28 community colleges in the state of Michigan, and by utilizing those systems, it'll be more cost effective. I happen to be a trustee of Glen Oaks Community College, so I'm become familiar with how that system operates, and because of dual enrollment with the high schools, we can actually get them dual credit and get them those young people trained on a path of being trained in a career or technical field and get them some college credit at the same time.
That is available now, I assume.
The dual enrollment part is, but it's limited. We have some in career technical education, But right now at Glen Oaks, we're working to expand that. We're working on an ag program with Michigan State, a partnership with them that we hope to introduce here in the fall for crop production primarily. And then we're ramping up our automotive training and our welding. But there is a lot more to do in career and technical education. And so there's a significant opportunity there to expand that.
The governor has talked too about more career technical education. If you are successful, you may find a willing partner there if he is successful when it comes to November. But there are many other issues out there that the legislature will be dealing with, not the least of which are roads, not the least of which are funding for the school systems of which you speak. Where do you come down on state spending, and what is your view of the way the state deals with tax money?
That's a big question. So let's see if I can't get you the quick answer on, let's talk about the surplus as an example and how I might appropriate that surplus. If I would suggest that we would spend about 70% of that surplus on roads. I am chairman of the St. Joseph County Road Commission. And I've been in that position for 3 years, so I am very much aware of the road funding situation and how dire it is, and it's been for a long time. Then I would allocate that remainder to unfunded liabilities and to they call it the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Budget stabilization.
Budget stabilization,
Yeah.
where some of the money is
rather
going
than expanding government at this time. I mean, we have those. We really have those three key areas. I would make those the highest priority for that, and then I would move to, once we've got those areas taken care of, restoring revenue sharing to local units of government, because you're really jeopardizing public safety. When you cut revenue sharing, you're cutting funding to a city or a village, and that jeopardizes their ability to provide basic services of police and fire protection.
I want to go back to what you talked about, the surplus, because what you have described is very much what many members in the House right now are talking about, is using at least part of the surplus, which I always think is a bit of an oxymoron in government, but the extra tax money that's there to go for roads. But that's not a continuous source of money, because you don't know what that's going to look like next year. We're almost out of time, but would you entertain the idea of creating a new revenue source, raising revenues, raising taxes to fix roads, as has been proposed by some in Lansing, though nothing has been voted on?
The short answer is no. I haven't been there yet. Once I'm there, I believe that we can find ways to reprioritize our funding and eliminate possibly some departments, reduce the size of government, and reprioritize without raising taxes.
Thanks to all of the candidates who joined us for our profiles this morning. And remember, whichever Republican is successful in August, they'll meet Democrat Mike Moroz in November. And we'll be back with more To the Point in just a moment. So the primary election is not until August, but between now and then, depending on where you live, you have a number of decisions to make about those primary matchups. Remember, a primary is a party affair largely, which means people of the same party running against each other to see who will face a member of the other party in the November election. Now, we've got a lot more of these matchups that we'll bring you here on To the Point, but we can't get to all of them on the air. So remember, in the coming weeks, you'll be able to go to woodtv.com and click on our election site, where you'll see interviews from all of the primary candidates. And of course, as we move towards November, all of the general election candidates as well. Here's a program note. We won't be here next week. We're being preempted, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with more of these primary matchups, and we'll continue to follow all of the very latest news out of Lansing, including the news of a new minimum wage law that was passed by the state Senate this past week. Expect action on that in the State House this coming week. Could the governor sign it before he heads off to the Detroit Regional Policy Conference on Mackinac Island? That's possible. That's something we'll be watching very closely as this week unfolds. In addition to all of that, a new package to help finance Detroit's recovery could come out of Lansing this week, and we'll be on Mackinac Island as well. All that's in the coming weeks. Hope you'll join us. To the Point.